So what is the objective of the minority on this matter?
Well, you know, Paul, the point is this. In the wisdom of the Ghanaian people, they configured this parliament. They constructed this parliament. And I think that we should accept the verdict of the people. I mean, in the 8th parliament, they literally gave us a hung parliament. Mm-hmm. In this 9th parliament, they've given the NDC a super majority. That's how the Ghanaian people structured it. But I've always maintained that the question is not just about the numbers. The question is about the quality of advocacy, the quality of presentation, as well as the competence of delivery in terms of discharging your responsibilities as a minority, which is why I said on the floor of the House yesterday that the MPP minority, we may be just a few of us, but clearly, if we are focused, as I believe we are working to be, we will be able to discharge our duties. The majority will always have their way because they have a super majority. There's absolutely no two ways about that. But what should never be allowed to happen is that the minority should have a say, and which is why we are bringing these issues to the fore and putting them before the Ghanaian people for them to make their own judgment. So what are we going to do? We cannot stop the budget. We can't vote against the budget, but we'll raise the issues and we will make sure that we put the matters out there. And I talked about priority. I mean, take for example, and it's always a question of priority. Every government decides what they use their money for. If we take the budget of 2026, for example, you will see that compensation for the office of the president under President Akufo-Addo in 2024, compensation for staff of the office of the president. In other words, the staff, the staff who work under the office of the president.
So that includes who? You can tell us.
That includes ministers, deputy ministers, presidential staffers.
At the office of the president.
They call it Office of Government Machinery.
Okay.
Some ministers, not all ministers, because you have ministers of state who are posted to the office of the president. Presidential staffers, chief of staff, presidential aide, presidential envoys. There's been a big debate in Ghana about size of government. And I believe that when the Ghanaian people talk about size of government, what they are concerned about is the incidence of the size of government on the public purse, on the public treasury, the amount of money that is used to maintain functionaries of the government. In 2024, the government of Ghana spent 326 million Ghana cedis on Office of Government Machinery or Office of the President, which is on compensation alone. Salaries. In 2025, the government of Ghana spent 540 million Ghana cedis, which is about 50% increment, 50% increase on the 2024 amount, which was used for compensation under the Office of Government Machinery. So there again, you have the issue of priorities. You take, for example, again, there's a big...
Does it mean they added more people or they just...
Well, you know, I have maintained that President Mohammed's government is bigger than President Akufo-Addo's government. I've made that point.
Yes.
And that's a fact.
You call them 100 ministers.
That's a fact. I mean, if you look at the substance of it, and if you look at the number of appointees he has, and the pegging, and the servicing of these appointees, in substance, he is running a bigger government. There's absolutely no two ways about that. Which is why you have this compensation ballooned. And as a matter of fact, compensation for Office of Government Machinery for the 2026 budget is gone further up. Because every day and again, you hear new appointments being made. A presidential envoy for Caribbean, presidential envoy for reparation, presidential. These are all ministers, in essence, when it comes to... Of course it is. I was deputy chief of staff, and I was in charge of human resource at the office of the president. With the greatest of respect, I ran the issues of budget and everything. And I'm telling you how it works. A senior presidential advisor is pegged at the level of an MP cabinet minister. So everything to do with their emoluments, their conditions of service, everything is equivalent to an MP cabinet minister.
A cabinet minister who is a member of parliament.
Who is a member of parliament.
Okay.
That is what it is. A presidential advisor simpliciter is pegged as a non-MP cabinet minister. And a presidential aide, so when you hear of a presidential aide is pegged at the level of deputy minister. So a president can appoint 60 ministers or 30 ministers and appoint 100 senior presidential advisors, presidential envoys, presidential aides, and you would think that government is a lean government. It's not.
Because all we know is minister, the word minister.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so he doesn't call them minister, he calls them something else.
But in essence, I mean, for example, this government is appointed 16 presidential staffers in charge of the 16 regions of Ghana. You are better off appointing 16 deputy ministers.
Deputy regional ministers.
Deputy regional ministers, because if you appoint a deputy regional minister, the deputy regional minister's equivalent is a presidential aide. But a presidential staffer is above. The emoluments and conditions of service is above a presidential aide, and therefore a deputy minister. So in terms of its incidence on the public purse, these 16 presidential staffers are drawing more from the national kitty than deputy ministers will draw. And that is the fact. And which is why you have the situation where the Akufo-Addo administration was spending 326 million on compensation. But in 2025, this government is spending 540 million. Of course, I cracked a joke on the floor of Parliament. That was a joke. I said the government is a Koshoko lean government because it's lean on the arms and limbs and the rest, but it's bloated on the stomach because it's lean on paper, but it's consuming a lot. You know, so these are the issues of priority, and of course there's a lot of talk about the Ministry of Finance not spending, and when you look at the figures and you go to the budget itself at page 123, you will see that program expenditure was 207 billion Ghana cedis for the first 3 quarters of 2025, but actual expenditure was 175 billion Ghana cedis, a shortfall of 15%. And so you find the finance minister come to Parliament to say 100 billion for Kokon Ketinketi, 2 billion for this, 5 billion for them. People get excited. But when in the long run, the actual releases are low. Because Bank of Ghana, for example, is indicated in its policy report that there are 3 major threats to the national economy: revenue shortfalls, compensation, energy sector expenditure or payment. So when you have a situation where revenue is down, revenue is not doing well, projected expenditure do not take place because government is not raking in the revenue and government is not able to meet allocations with actuals. And then you have the private sector and the real sector suffering, and then you have the situation of unemployment exacerbated. Of course, I made also the point about this Formula 133, where we were told that we're going to have a 24-hour economy, and we're going to have, for every job, we're going to have 3 shifts from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., which is 8 hours. One person will take the job, then that person will retire. Then from 4 p.m. to midnight, another 8 hours, another person will take over that job. And then from midnight to 8 a.m., another 8 hours, the third person will take it, where it was described as Formula 133. That is not happening. And we have issues of unemployment. We have issues of healthcare. We have issues of education. We have issues of infrastructure. We have issues of cost of living. We have issues of cost of doing business. And so at every point in time, the question of prioritization will come up. And I know some viewers will be asking the question, oh, but MPP did this, MPP created that problem, MPP. Look, governments are voted into office to help bring about relief and provide solutions. And as they say, all politics and all governance is about the future. And His Excellency President Mahama himself reminded us in the course of the 2024 campaign when he was called upon to give his policies on Galamsey, where he said he's not responsible. And he was right. President Mahama was very right. He said President Akufo-Addo is in charge. He should deal with it. He should deal with Galamsey. So when we raise these issues, and I made that point on the floor of Parliament yesterday, it's not destructive. It's not intended to derail the efforts of the government, but it's intended to put forward constructive suggestions, alternatives, criticism, call it that way, for the betterment of our country. So these are the issues.
Very, very interesting. I'm still very interested. What did NPP, NDC say about the 540 bill of the Office of the President? Have they said anything?
Well, they can't say anything.
You are quoting from the figures.
I'm quoting from the budget. These are facts. These data.
Are these things obligatory for the Finance Minister to report to Parliament?
Well, the Finance Minister has to give, in every budget, the Finance Minister has to give a background, but these are facts. Nobody can dispute. It's clear. I mean, 2024 compensation for Office of Government Machinery was 326 million Ghana cedis.
He didn't report on the 2024 one.
2025.
No, 2025. When he was reporting, he said that 2024, as they sometimes say, it was this and now it is this. Is he able to say that?
Well, the point is that the issue of the size of government is one that I have always maintained, that we should have a much more in-depth, objective discussion or debate or interrogation of, because take for example, I hear people say United Kingdom has this number of population. They have 60 million people, twice the size of government, but they have
11 ministers.
11 ministers. They're talking about Secretary of State.
Yes.
You see, they're talking about cabinet ministers. They're talking about Secretary of State, heads of departments. But beneath them, you have ministers of state.
Plenty.
You have PPS, parliamentary private secretaries, who are equivalent, in our case, equivalent of deputy ministers, and so on and so. So we need to have an honest discussion of some of these matters.
America has fewer ministers than we do.
Well, they do, but in the American machinery, Paul, as you know, if you go to the Secretary of State's office, if you go to the Secretary of State, he has Under Secretary for Asia, and the Secretary for Middle East, and the Secretary for
deputy ministers.
They are all deputy ministers. We need a lean, and let me qualify, we need a truly lean but efficient government. Not a lean government on paper, 60 ministers, and yet presidential staffers are about 100. And the presidential staffers are equivalent of ministers and are drawing salaries, driving vehicles, drawing fuel, taking allowances, the same as ministers would take. Then as we say in Ghana, did we go or we came?
Even if when they travel the same thing?
The same thing. It's the same thing.
A lot of money.
It's the same thing. There's the same thing. Now, and I raised this issue about 6 months ago. Nobody's been able to challenge it because that is a fact. But I cite this again just to answer your question about prioritization. I think there is a big issue of prioritization as we speak. I mean, we have very concrete issues. The ISA, the Institute of Statistical and
the one at Legon.
Yes, ISA. They've come out with a very copious and comprehensive analysis of the budget, and they've raised a lot of issues. I think these are matters that we should pay particular attention to, where they are talking about weak growth outlook, major structural risk, and so on and so forth. You have the Ghana Union of Traders Association, who are saying that VAT is moved from 4% to 20% overnight. These are still matters which are going
they're also drawing from the same budget.
The same budget, quoting from the same budget, and these are matters that are going to definitely affect the private sector and therefore affect unemployment. And in my view, unemployment continues to be the biggest issue in our country. So whatever we can do to ensure that we deal with unemployment, we have to do so. You have the Institute of Public Policy and Accountability talking about Ghana's macroeconomic recovery did not begin in 2025, and even projecting that momentum is not on the side of growth, because you have the first 2 quarters of this year, growth went up. The last 2 quarters of the year is slumped, and indeed, per the finance minister's own projection, 2026, we are going to grow lesser than we are growing today. So they are real fundamental issues which we have to put on the table. And I believe that the finance minister should broaden his consultations and look at some of these plans is put before Parliament, especially when it comes to the prioritization of expenditure, and we should be able to